Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Senstennial Podcast and the trio for the podcast reunites. Finally, we found a
We're
time that the
back.
three of us can meet over the summer, and our next handful of episodes will be recapping Ottawa's decisions either at the NHL draft, whether it was free agency, signings, trades, all that stuff, and more. Yes, like Internet Explorer, we're bringing these topics up weeks later than you expected. Um, and we're
Oh,
doing it
that's
all for
good.
you, the love of the game. Thanks for kicking it with us. And we're gonna kick things off, diving right into it with the NHL draft. Now this was one where I think there was, I don't know if a lot of pressure was on the Ottawa Senators, but when people looked at their prospect system, there was Carter Yakimchuk and not much else. So going into this draft, I think it was important for the Ottawa Senators to try and pick up some prospects in some key areas to restock the cupboards, as the saying goes. Now, the draft class was highlighted by the 23rd overall pick the Ottawa Senators selected from University of Wisconsin, and that was right-hand defenseman Logan Hensler, or the Sensler, as some people have titled him. So maybe
Including the
let's
Sens.
including the Sens. So maybe let's start there. And Matt, maybe get your thoughts there on Logan Hensler joining the squad.
I mean, quite honestly, I was a bit surprised they went for another right shot defenseman. And it makes me a bit curious as to if there was a little more behind that idea. I think Hensler has the size and makeup of exactly what the Sens are trying to build on the back end. They're looking to make their defense a stalwart of sorts, and that's how you win championships is with just unreal defense. And if he is able to, sort of become what he is expected to become, which is about a top four defenseman, that's kind of where the Sens need him to be slotted. He doesn't have the offense of Carter Yakimchuk, for example, but he's definitely much better defensively than him. Uh, he can do a lot of things pretty well, and he is a decent enough skater, has good puck skills, and I mean, he's a right shot. Ultimately, I'm a bit surprised though that they didn't go for a forward, considering the cupboards are pretty bare, if I'm honest. Stephen Halliday and Blake Montgomery are the two significant prospects we have at that position. Um, but I think everybody is really putting a focus on how hard it is to get premium right shot level defensemen. They don't come on the market very often. Um, and when you get one, you try and hold on to them as long as possible. Ottawa just brought back Lassie Thompson, for example. And there's a reason for that. It's because right shot defensemen don't grow on trees. You have to draft them, uh, and trading for them is extremely difficult. So I think just padding that pipeline is not a bad idea. I think the Sens have two very good right shot defense prospects in Yakimchuk and Hensler, and then they've got a couple others in the system as well. But I can see the rationale, but I think they left a lot of skill and uh, offensive capability on the board to add to their forward crop.
Yeah, and it seems like Steos noted that they were maybe not anticipating to go defenseman, but based on how the draft went, they were really surprised that Hensler was there, and he was highly rated by the team. So they ended up taking him, and I think he mentioned as part of his response that the value of taking a right-handed defenseman instead of a forward kind of helped tip the scales that way as well. But yeah, Bennett, what were your thoughts on them grabbing another right-hand defenseman in the draft in the first round, back-to-back years?
Well, it's exactly like Nath said. It is one of the most valuable skater positions on a team, and it is a notoriously difficult position to fill. I mean, the Sens have arguably been trying to find a third right hand shot defenseman for it took them 3 or 4 seasons to kind of build a competent right hand side. And even having done so, we've seen how many injuries Zub tends to pick up over the course of a season. He's 29. Nick Jensen is 34. We just brought in Jordan Spence, which we're going to touch on later. So that adds a little bit of youth to the right-hand side. And then, between him and Matt and Palo, and of course the Kemchuk and now Hensler, it's like you can sort of see, okay, like of those players, I think there's a very good chance that the Sens end up with three good defensemen on the right-hand side. And that is certainly very valuable. Obviously, you want the team to always take the best player available. It seems in this case that they feel that they did. And I'm really interested to see how this one goes because this is one of the first drafts that, you've had a new scouting direction, I think, for the team. And I guess the results remain to be seen. We've seen a lot of reaches from the Sens in the last kind of like 5 or 6 years. We're hoping that the team is going to be turning that trend around, especially as we're hopefully entering a time where we're going to be reasonably competitive. We're hoping to be a playoff team year in, year out. You're going to have fewer draft picks to expend. You got to hit some of them because if you don't, I mean, you're going to end up with bare cupboards very quickly and no way to restock them. So I think that having a really stacked right-hand side defensive core, if that is how things end up, is a great thing to have. But we'll see. And, ultimately, guys that are first overall can go bust. Guys that are sixth round sleepers can become Hall of Famers. So at the end of the day, all you can kind of do is take the players that you have faith in and develop them and hope for the best, right?
And to that point, Ottawa has not drafted any of the right-handed defensemen they have on their roster.
Yeah.
Jensen and Spence, they both acquired through trade. Matt and Palo and Zub were both free agents they signed from Europe. And, obviously, in that single regard, good pro scouting from the Ottawa Senators under the Dorion regime. But yeah, like Ottawa has no right-handed defenseman that they've drafted. Meanwhile, you look at the left side, it's all left-hand defensemen that the Sens have drafted.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to see that difference. And so, yeah, like the last successful right-hand defenseman Ottawa drafted, obviously would, well, I'm going to use successful loosely here, but Cody Ceci has had a long career in the NHL. And prior to
Yeah.
that, it was Erik Karlsson, which I don't think we need to go into detail about how good of a player Erik Karlsson was in his prime. But yeah, since then, like what CC was 2012, 2013, around there, 2012, I believe. Like, is there any notable right hand defenseman? Bernard Docker and Lassie Thompson didn't pan out. So they need to have a couple guys who they hit on and can get to the NHL ranks. So interesting for them to go back to back drafts grabbing a right hand defenseman. But hey, like we already talked about, premium position and Bennett, you mentioned the ages of some of the guys like Jensen and Zub is still in his 20s, but approaching that 30 mark, and who knows what'll happen, especially with his availability. He's hasn't been very healthy the last couple of seasons, so Ottawa needs a couple guys to develop in their system so that they can fill those positions once they're requiring some replacements. I'll move to the rest of the draft. We talked about Jordan Spence. Ottawa ended up trading back from 21. They picked up a third round pick and moved back to 23. That's where they drafted Logan Hensler. They ended up flipping that third round pick and a sixth round pick for Jordan Spence. We'll get to that in an upcoming episode. But in the third round, they drafted forward Blake Vanek. And yes, that is the son of Thomas Vanek. Then they went on to draft goaltender out of the QMJHL, Lucas Beckman. Drafted their first Russian player since 2005. It's
That's
been
nuts.
20 years since the Sens have drafted a Russian. And they go out and get forward Dmitri Isayev. They then draft in the sixth round. Exciting for me as someone with Croatian heritage, the first Croatian-born player drafted to the NHL, Bruno Idzan, which of course is that Sen sounding part of his last name. Perfect, brilliant pick. And then in the 7th round at 213, they pick up goalie Andrei Trofimov, also out of Russia. So 2 Russian picks. It's pretty wild for the Ottawa Senators. But hey, Steo said that they're drafting on the player. They're not drafting for passport. So that's Ottawa's draft class, a bit of a smaller one because they moved around a lot of picks. But 2 goaltenders, 3 forwards, and of course, Logan Hensler being the lone defenseman in that draft class. So maybe before we wrap up our mini draft episode here, Ben, I'll throw it to you. Do you have any thoughts on the draft class as a whole or Ottawa's approach to this draft?
Nothing much more than I've already said. I mean, you're really hoping to see that things are changing for this team going forward. Um, you know, their amateur scouting has taken a bit of a dip in the last kind of like 5, 6 seasons, particularly near the end of the Dorion tenure. And we're really hoping that they can turn that around. I'm excited to see what these guys can do. I think that they added some very respectable prospects to the system, considering that our first pick was 21st overall, or sorry, 23rd overall. Um, and you know what? I mean, big picture, like the Sens want to be in a position where we're not picking high every summer, right? That means the team on ice is competing and as they did this year, making the playoffs. So much as, it's nice to get excited about prospects and draft picks and things like that. If we're able to get excited about the players that are currently on the team and currently competing in the league, that's the goal, right?
Totally. Matt, how do you feel?
I think it was a bit of an interesting draft. We had middling uh grades from various draft analysts, and that's kind of to be expected when you don't have a plethora of picks. I thought the Blake Vanek pick was pretty cool. NHL bloodlines, that's usually a big Ottawa thing, especially old Ottawa. But I mean, he had a solid season in high school and then had a decent showing in the USHL. He's going to play in the WHL. He's already quite large. So let's see how that goes. I thought a couple of the interesting ones, Isayev is 5'9". He's tiny. But 45 points in 44 games in the MHL last year are, yeah. And I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. So could be that explosive offense you're looking for in those, like, it's kind of boomer bust at those points, right? Um, I liked taking the 2 goalies. I think Beckman was, I think, one of the youngest players in the draft, and he had a very good season in the QMJHL and is going to be growing on that one. And then Trofimov, the goalie from Russia, is he had a good season in the MHL as well. Both of them are good sizes. They move well, and I love Russian goalies because you could take them wherever. Sorokin was super late. Shesterkin was super late. Kuchekov was super late. Actually, Kuchekov was a second round pick, but point still stands. I think Russia does really well with developing goalies, and I always love the idea of taking Russian goalies, and the Sens never do until this one, especially late. Zach Burke and Justin Peters went to bat for taking him, and a goalie scout seems to think that he's got pro upside. So if you're taking that with your last pick, there's nothing to sneeze at. So I think there's some interesting stuff from this draft. The most surprising one being that we took a 5'9" forward. So that could be signaling that the Sens are going to be kind of going in a bit of a more interesting direction in the future. But at the same time, they did take a 6'3" defenseman first. So who knows?
And
Who
Blake
knows
Vanek.
what?
Yeah.
Six
He's
foot
also a
three
big
as well.
boy.
It was a bit of a, I do agree, it was a bit of a mixed bag. It was some, what we've come to see as like stereotypical Sens picks, as well as picks that, we haven't seen the team make recently. So I think that it's showing signs of, if not progress, because it's too early to tell whether any of these guys are going to be hits or not. But at least it shows that the team is perhaps a little bit less rigid in its draft approach. Seeing them taking the players from Russia, seeing them taking the chance on an undersized forward. I think those are good things to do. I mean, like we've been saying all episode, the NHL draft there's a lot of skill and thought that goes into it, but there's also a lot of kind of just like taking chances on guys and hoping for the best. And if you take chances on different types of players as well as just different players, then you're setting yourself up for more success.
On that note, thank you for tuning in to our 2025 Sens draft recap. And in our next episode, we'll cover their trade at the draft for defenseman Jordan Spence. So we'll catch you next time. Go Sens, go.
Later.
Go Sens, go.